with you? Are you
Clap
getting it in?
along if you feel like
And
happiness
listen,
is the truth.
does it have to be coffee or tea in
Clap
that cup?
along if
Or it
you
can
know
be.
what
Mine's
happiness is to
water.
you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
It feels like a crime to end that wonderful song, to be so honest. Like it makes it great. It's so nice to have everybody here. So thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, please drop that emoji or your favorite brunch item. I am a big sucker for French toast, but I've also learned I'm allergic to a bunch of the things in that, so I still am learning how to recreate an allergy-friendly option. But someday I'll accomplish it. All right, folks. Well, I want to get started on the word clouds because I'm really excited for us all to be here celebrating International Volunteer Managers Day. So make sure that you're on mute, and we want to just make sure that we're ready to go. And thank you, of course, to Better Impact, as always, for supporting Alive and what we do.
Colin, before you get started, introduce yourself. Who are you?
Oh, I forgot that special part, Nicole. Well, I'm Colin Kind. I'm actually a volunteer manager myself, and I have the privilege of being able to volunteer with Alive. And so I was lucky enough to get involved with helping with International Volunteer Managers Day, and helping with this celebration because I know how important it is to celebrate us, because sometimes it's us that needs to celebrate us more than anything, when especially in these times when things are a little crazy right now. So, thank you all for being here. I love being a volunteer manager and being surrounded by other volunteer managers. So, let's do this. All right. So, for our first word cloud, the prompt is going to be, what does being a volunteer manager mean to you? And I know it's hard to sum that up in one word, but give me like one word or a short statement about what your role means to you, while we do this. So here is that word cloud. Connection. I love that. Community. Yes, that's one of my favorite parts of being in volunteer management is having the opportunity to be able to build that community and connect with others and especially with the common good, right? And be focusing on that. Impact. I love that. Supporting. Oh, this is all perfect. Perfect. See, I love the way we're all talking about connection or a connector, mission impact, supporting, empowerment. This is beautiful. This is so wonderful. Okay, I don't want to spend too long on these, even though I wish I could, but we're going to celebrate these. Everyone will have the link to look back at this later on so that we can share with all of these wonderful answers as well. So I'm going to give folks just a couple more moments and then we're going to move on to our next one.
I saw that strategic beverage sip there, my friend. Yes.
I know we got to do that. Okay, and so now here's important, right? What are we doing today? We are celebrating our impact on volunteer engagement as volunteer managers, right? So let's talk about that. So now, another hard thing to summarize, but one word or a short statement on how you celebrate your impact, not your volunteer's impact, but your impact. Let's do that one next here. Like that, reflection, donuts. Yes, we always need a good sweet treat. Brag. Hey, honestly, we do have to brag about ourselves sometimes, okay? Celebrating others. Dance. I love this. Your team asking for a raise. Yeah. Hey, we got to be advocates for ourselves too, right? Iced coffee. Treat yourself. I love that. Yes, treat yourself. Whatever it is. Coffee. That bottle of wine got a lot bigger. I wonder if that's because a few people are putting that answer in there. Food with teammates. Ooh, a pedicure. Oh, these sound nice. Oh, this sounds really nice. Now I know how to treat myself later. Goodness. Okay, well, remember, everybody, after today, when you're going home, make sure you do all of these things to celebrate yourself, okay? If we got inspiration from other people, go ahead and do that. All right, let's do a couple seconds longer and then we will move. I just love this so much, though. Bragging rights again, yet. Shout outs. Pat on the back. Honestly, yeah. Even just give yourself pats on the back for being here and for celebrating you today and taking the time to do that because it's important. Celebrate you. Hitting heart. Dance party. See, I love seeing dance again. You know, we gotta feel those things and move our body. It feels good. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead to the next part. All right. So now I have this incredible opportunity and privilege to introduce our lovely guest speaker. So today we're going to have Melissa Rhodes Carter here. She is the senior manager for community resilience for the Caring and Connected Communities portfolio at the Walmart organization. So her and Nicole have some incredible Q&A moments that we're going to do. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can be able to watch them and listen to this incredible information.
Hi, how are you all? Let me see. I don't, there we go. I wonder if we can do the view where it's the speaker, multi-speaker. I'm not sure. Sort gallery. Well, I'm gonna start talking. Melissa, I know you're here somewhere.
I'm here. Yes. I don't know if
There
I'm
you are.
coming up. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so thank you all so much for being here to celebrate this International Volunteer Managers Day. I heard somebody say the other day, and I took this to heart. They're like, "It's our Christmas. It's our one day a year that we get to celebrate being volunteer managers and all of the things that we're doing." And we are so thrilled to have Melissa here. Melissa is joining us from the Walmart Foundation, and just so excited to have her because she is a supporter of the importance of the work of volunteer management. So we're going to have a great discussion. I'm going to try and see if I can figure out how to get us to where it's just the two of us.
Sounds good.
Because this is all new to us and we're still trying to figure these things out. But in the
Okay.
meantime, Melissa, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm so thrilled to be here and super excited to celebrate everybody because, the work that you all do, I know you know this, but sometimes it's really great just to hear it again and again that you all are doing so much to create connection in your communities. And I feel really privileged to get to come and talk about how we are really shaping our giving strategy around the work that you do, because we believe that it is so important to fostering long-term community resilience and long-term belonging in communities through the work of leaders of volunteers. So I'm really excited to dig into some of that, and I hope that you feel through this conversation as celebrated as you should be. And we're going to talk about some of the specifics of some of the things that I've been learning through some of my research. And I feel really honored. The more that I'm digging into this space, the more that I'm learning, the more that I know that the real heroes and builders of connection and community are the people on this call. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, we are so happy to have you. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to dive in. So I have some questions. I have some questions
Awesome.
for you, okay? Okay. So my first question is why does
Mhm.
the Walmart Foundation fund volunteer engagement? And what makes leaders of volunteers so pivotal in that work?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to back up and I'm going to do a bit of framing around this. I know that at times, I know you all are leaders of volunteers and you're not necessarily in kind of like that development space or writing sort of grant proposals and things like that. But I know that it can be helpful to understand or maybe to get some insight into how funders think about and sort of put together their theories of change a little bit. So I'm going to back up and set some of that framing up so that you can understand maybe how we've gotten to the place that we're in and why we are thinking so much about leaders of volunteers and volunteer engagement. So our foundation's focus on, we have a really huge focus on community resilience. And that comes directly from who Walmart is as a company, because Walmart is serving hundreds of millions of customers every week. And Walmart employs over 1.6 million associates who live and work in 4,500 communities in the United States alone. Last year, Walmart.org, which is the combined efforts of our foundation and our corporate giving, contributed around $2 billion in cash and in-kind donations to support community well-being. But the thing that we know about community resilience is that it's not just resources in that sense, monetary resources. It's about relationships, the trust and the connection between neighbors. And we've learned a lot about how volunteerism is one of the most powerful ways to strengthen those ties and to really build that social capital. Around 3 years ago, the Walmart Foundation, through the portfolio of giving that I lead, made a grant to a research organization called More in Common. And they produced a report that came out recently called The Connection Opportunity. They've got an awesome landing page with both the main report. They've got focused reports. If any of you are from Kansas City, Pittsburgh, or the Houston area, we did some geographic specific reports in those areas. And they also have a typology around different segments of the American population and what drives them to connect or not connect. So I think it could be really interesting work if you wanted to just search More in Common, the connection opportunity. And that study found that most Americans do want to connect across divides. They do want to get to know people who have different experiences, different backgrounds than they do. But the thing that they really uncovered is that Americans don't want to do that necessarily through forced dialogue or debating contentious issues. They want to find those points of convergence, and they really want to come together around a shared purpose. The research really gave people a lot of different options, and they said, I would be most interested in getting to know people who are different from me if I could do that through coming together with my neighbors to tackle a shared challenge in our community. And I am almost confident that everybody on this call is working on shared challenges in their community in some way. And so that insight really has affirmed what we've seen in practice. When people work side by side toward a goal that matters to them locally, it builds both trust and belonging. And so that's why we've really begun to shift a lot of our funding and our investment strategy to invest in volunteer engagement. We've seen that when people work side by side on something that matters, like whether it's cleaning up a park, food distribution, a neighborhood build, they really start to see one another differently. And that is, the technical academic term for that is intergroup contact. But the thing I'll say, little caveat here, is something that you all know better than I do, that connection and deep relationships don't happen automatically. It takes skill, it takes intention. There's some specific conditions that are necessitated to really foster those relationships. And that's where leaders of volunteers come in. You all are the designers of those human experiences that are making sure people feel welcomed and seen and bringing people together through something shared. So I'll just give one example and then I'll stop talking. We have worked with an organization called Hello Neighbor in the Pittsburgh area that connects longtime residents to new neighbors. And we've seen how the volunteer leaders create opportunities for new neighbors and long-term residents to serve one another, not serving for one another, but serving with one another. And that's where this ethic of mutuality, this idea that everyone has something to give and something to gain. And so our most recent grant to Hello Neighbor was designed specifically to support leaders of volunteers their roles and their training specifically on how we embed some of those principles. How do we sustain contact over time? How do we embed that ethic of mutuality? What are the principles and practices to foster those relationships over time?
That is so beautifully said. And I love everything about that. And it's so nice to know that people who are, I would just say, like in the upper echelon of like funding, and they're beginning to realize that. I have a quick question for you based on that, right? Because I know a lot of everything. I know like you probably got like a hand clap from everybody sitting on this call, right? Because we all know that. How like what did it take for people to see for you all to see that? So as leaders of volunteers that are on this
Mhm,
call, we understand that connection aspect. But
mhm,
for potential funders and like people like yourself, how do we get them to see that? Like how,
mhm.
you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
love that you are supporting us in that. Um, but how do we get others to see that? Bring them to
Yeah.
the light. Like
Yes.
what do we tell our executive directors? What do we tell, like how do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think that, you know, one of the, again, one of the first things that we did is we really invested in some of that initial research because we did have a focus on community resilience through helping people of different backgrounds and experiences connect with one another, kind of diversifying our social networks. That was our end goal. But we know that that's not what everybody is sort of working against. We know that there are a lot of different funders who invest in different issue areas. But the thing is every single cause is strengthened when people feel connected to one another. When people feel connected to one another in the context of your organization, they are most likely to engage more deeply in the mission of your organization, right? And so I think that there's a lot of data around kind of this idea of belonging and connection as a byproduct. But the more that there's this focus right now, especially, there's a very large sort of bridging and belonging field that in the past few years, especially, has been emerging. And I think that there are some more resources that are kind of coming into the space where people are understanding that it is through this shared action that there's going to be these opportunities to really drive some of these outcomes.
I love that. I love that. Because there's nothing like, we can tell people all day, but when you bring them into the fold and they experience it, more, that experience more than anything is what will really like change mindsets and behaviors behind it. So you kind of touched a little bit on my next question,
Mhm.
but to maybe elaborate just a little bit more.
Yeah,
But so, how can organizations of any cause, right, like you had talked
yeah,
about just a minute ago, environmental, education, health, like social service, all of those, frame volunteer work as community connection work? Because
yeah.
often, sometimes people, when they hear volunteer, they don't connect it to community work, right? So how do we make it sound almost the same?
Yeah. The thing that I just would call attention to is I think that we're all aware that there is a profound loneliness and social isolation epidemic right now. And I just think about this virtuous cycle that can commence when we all and our organizations can begin to offer an opportunity for belonging to a volunteer. Thinking about this, a volunteer in our community, someone who we all are to a degree, right? We're all experiencing the impacts of some of this epidemic. And if we can offer that to someone in our community who they themselves are experiencing some of that loneliness and social isolation, and in turn, that volunteer begins to increase their sense of belonging. And that increased sense of belonging begins to turn into an increased sense of engagement with your organization. Think of all of the outcomes that I know a lot of you all are trying to drive through your volunteer engagement strategies. And I almost think about flipping it on its head. I know that folks are trying to drive things like higher volunteer retention, all the way to maybe this funnel of how do we turn volunteers into champions? How do we access their network? Maybe all the way to donors. And we kind of start with those outcomes. And I wonder if we started with the fact that so many people right now are craving a sense of connection. And if we were to see our organizations and our volunteering opportunities as a place to build community and connection around our organizations and their missions, if some of those outcomes that we're so focused on might actually start to solve themselves, if we started to create this kind of virtuous cycle. One of the things that we hear a lot about in sales is that it's generally like 5 to 25 times cheaper to engage an existing audience than it is to reach a new audience. And I know that volunteer engagement and retention is really challenging. And sometimes it can feel like churn and burn. I've been a part of volunteer experiences like that. But what if our strategies were really designed to engage and retain? And I know that it's really easy to think, well, maybe it should be about the task. Maybe we should be thinking about meaningful tasks. And I do think and believe that volunteers want to be engaged in meaningful, impactful work. But the headlines that I'm seeing, and again, this is the space that I'm in every day, but I don't think it takes more than just a few seconds of scrolling through social media to realize people are exhausted, people are lonely, people are divided, people are craving connection and purpose. And if we could maybe flip things on their head and say, here's a place of connection and purpose and meaning, what would that mean for engagement and retention for our organizations?
I think you hit it on the nail. There's nothing stronger than community. And even just like Colin had said, like in the word cloud, when he was talking about what do you feel like your role is, community, 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 it just kept popping up. And I think that is like the strongest answer. And when people come together for a cause, it tends to erase those lines of race, color, religion, like all of those things, because you're able to put all that, you come together and you're focusing on what is passion you're happy about and passionate about, that you care about, and those other things fall to the wayside, or at least to the background. So I think that I love every bit of that. And so I know that you've because you all are in this space and you are funding, and you've had opportunities to work with different organizations, like what are the like let me see, how would I put it? Like promising relational volunteer practices that you've seen that have really worked. So as you have worked with different organizations, like what are things that you have, I guess, are the things that the really successful organizations have done?
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the most successful organizations that I've seen in this space is we actually are funding the Trust for Public Land. It is a parks and public spaces organization, and they are doing really fantastic work in this space where they say that common and shared spaces can be used as catalytically to foster connection and they, yes, they do great work. And they have got a great framework called the On Common Ground framework. Um, and so I know that it might be a bit sort of counterintuitive to think about, well, no, only organizations that think about community or think about cohesion or think about belonging, like we've said, should be focused on these types of practices. But they upend that notion, and they are focused on parks and green spaces. And I really think in many ways are leading, getting down to the brass tacks of what are some promising relational practices. And so a couple of things I've pulled together from some of their work. And then we also helped to support a leading academic researcher in this space. Her name is Dr. Linda Trop. She's at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She created a great guide called the Cultivating Contact Guide. And it has a starter survey. If anybody's interested, you just have to Google Cultivating Contact Guide. About how to really begin to think about some of these practices. But I would just say a couple of principles. Focus on relationships first. Create the conditions for volunteers to connect across differences. And then mutuality. Make sure every participant feels that they have something to give and something to gain. You know, somebody mentioned in the chat something about people are struggling financially, and that is 100% true. And, you know, are trying to fund what we believe are some innovative practices right now, even in food bank settings, where we know that there are client volunteers. And I'm sure some of you all have seen this in some of your work, where you have maybe you're working with corporate or more traditional volunteers, and then you're working with client volunteers. And what would it look like, instead of having those types of volunteers in silos, if we were bringing them into connection and community with one another? We know that building those types of social ties and that type of social networking is one of the most effective ways to improve upward economic mobility, right? And so we need to be bringing people into community with one another. So I will say, again, principles, relationships first, an ethic of mutuality. There's not, here are the folks who are here to give something, and here are folks who are here to receive something. Everybody has something to give and something to receive. And then I would say, you know, make sure that when you are designing your events, that even just a few minutes of bringing everybody together, having some form of opening circle where it's not just a two-way conversation between you and the volunteers, but you're kind of democratizing that conversation. How are you helping the volunteers connect with one another? Because again, I know it feels like there's this imperative to have your volunteers connect with you and connect with the mission. But if they connect with each other, it's that old saying of people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so they're going to probably forget the speech that you gave about the mission, but they will not forget if they felt connected and energized and enlivened by the other volunteers, by the experience they had of being connected to other human beings in that space. So
Yeah.
start with an opening circle, start with connecting the volunteers to one another. I love a name tag. I'm so, I guess, analog and old school. You know, make sure that people can have a name tag so they know who they're working with. Make sure to avoid solo tasks, do that pairing and group work together. And then I always think about visible ownership. How do you add small touches, murals, storytelling, so that volunteers can see themselves reflected in the work that they're doing? Um, continuity is so important. This is one of the hardest pieces, but how do you continue to, again, invite people back to have that sustained engagement over time? And then I think about part of that is, what would it look like? You all are doing this. I know you all are. Snap a picture with permission. Think about a way that those volunteers might be able to connect with one another through, you know, a digital format, maybe later on, that might increase retention with each other or with you and your mission. So
Oh,
I'll
I'm
stop
sorry.
there.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that, because actually in a previous organization that I work with, we literally would do a morning circle, and it was that was how we greeted each other. It was, and every time at the beginning and at the end of the shift, we formed a circle, and you learned, you met the person next to you, you interacted. So it wasn't just about the person who was leading the event, but it was, and every time you circled up, you were circling up next to somebody different, and you were interacting with somebody different. And so I absolutely, I co-sign on that, just from actual experience of doing it. Um, the last little thing that I will ask is, look, if there are like any executive directors or supervisors of leaders of volunteers on this call, what would you say to them?
Mhm.
Because a lot of what you've said today, everybody in the call is like, yes. And they're like, and now it's awesome, right? Because we're like, we can be
Mhm.
like, Melissa said, Melissa agrees with us. Like, we have that in our back pocket. Walmart Foundation agrees with us. But like,
Mhm.
if, because often things that affect us, those decisions are
Mhm.
being made when we as a leader of volunteers are not in the room.
Mhm.
So if you were speaking to an executive director or speaking
Mhm.
to somebody who to get the buy-in to understand the
Mhm.
importance of investing in the leader of volunteer, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that what we need right now as a society, as a country, are human-centered outcomes. And funders increasingly are focused in this area. They are focused on things like belonging. They're focused on trust. They're focused on community resilience. They're focused on these human-centered outcomes. They're tricky and they're hard to measure. But folks want to see human-centered, locally place-based outcomes. And you don't get to human-centered outcomes without humans. And the humans that are driving those human-centered outcomes are the people on this call. And they need support, they need resources, they need recognition. And I just could not encourage folks more highly in that executive director role to champion their leaders of volunteers, to be the number one champion for their leaders of volunteers. And I guarantee you that if you make your volunteerism program and your leaders of volunteers your bright, shining stars, it will strengthen your program, because funders are not just corporate funders and foundations. Funders are donors, individual donors. Funders are volunteers themselves. They are people in your community that show up. And so they come in many different shapes and forms, and it's the age of technology, it's the age of AI. But what we really, as we say at Walmart, we say we are people-led and tech-powered. And I believe that's the
Ooh.
future.
Oh yeah, we are quoting that. I'm sorry. People led and tech powered.
Yeah,
That's gonna be the quote, y'all.
you can be tech-powered, you can embrace AI, but always be people-led, always be driving towards those human-centered outcomes, and support your humans who are leading that work.
That
I'll
is,
stop there.
I think, I mean, that's the perfect place to stop. That was, listen, for everybody on the call, we're gonna, like, you're getting like snaps and everything. We're gonna like edit that part out and send that to everybody so that they could send to their ED. Oh my
There you
goodness.
go.
That was absolutely phenomenally amazing. We have just a few more minutes. So if anybody has any questions for Melissa, can you drop it in the chat? Oh, look at mic drop. Yes, you are getting all the hearts and everything. This is
Yeah,
phenomenal. I think people are just liking the tech
good.
powered, people led. I love that. Like that hit
Yeah,
some hearts. That hit some hearts.
awesome.
Okay, we do have a question that came in from Jessica. It says, how will volunteer mandates change things in the next year? I don't know if that's maybe from like coming from a funding perspective. Like, are people thinking of that differently? Like, what are you thinking? What do you think about that?
Can you give a little bit more context about the specific volunteer mandates?
So,
Hi. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can just elaborate, I guess, sir. So I guess some of our states are going to be requiring, with,
Yeah.
some of these, the big bill,
Hmm.
some mandates for volunteerism. And so I'm assuming and I'm hoping that funders are going to keep this in mind, because I
Yeah.
think that's going to really affect, I mean, particularly in my role, it will affect, because they might be coming to you more often. There's going to be, maybe a lot of um, processes aren't in place for something like that. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot more pressures on us,
Yeah.
particularly in the state I'm in. So I'm just curious if you guys have like thought
Yeah.
about that at the foundation.
Yeah, we are. We're looking at, I think, all of the different levels of volunteerism, everything from all of the different systems levels. I would say the state volunteerism, national service. There have been so many changes. It has certainly been, a period of disruption on a lot of levels. And so we're having conversations at the state level, like I mentioned. And I think what we really want to be focused on is, again, what is the infrastructure that needs to be in place to be supportive of these shifts and these changes? And as we are thinking about that infrastructure, how are we embedding into that a specific focus on driving those relational outcomes? And so as we are making investments, both, strategically forward thinking, but also you know, as the landscape is changing, we are trying to embed into those investments specific focus and around some of those principles that I outlined around some of those intergroup contact or connected service pieces. And I think in some ways that could be beneficial, because I know that as volunteer managers, you all are thinking a lot about we've got to have a lot of capacity to absorb, and we've got to have the tasks and everything set up and in place for that. But I would welcome your feedback. I think we're in a learning mode. I don't want to be projecting or hypothesizing too much at this stage, but we're tracking those pieces. And as things shift and change, I think we really want to use our influence where we can to be focused on the human-centered pieces of all of this and driving those relational outcomes.
Awesome. Awesome. Melissa, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Melissa, how can people get in touch with you? So we have everybody on the call. We have a whole like celebration that's coming up, like all sorts of surprises. So I don't want you to miss out the opportunity to be able to connect with Melissa. That's the only reason why we're cutting it short. I mean, we could literally talk about this probably for the next hour and a half, but our International Volunteer Manager Day team has a whole bunch planned for you. So we want to make sure that we can get to that, but not without asking Melissa, how can we stay in contact with you, or just, stay abreast of what Walmart Foundation is doing?
Yeah, I think if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, it's under Melissa Rhodes Carter. I'm also happy for folks, if you want to send me a note via email, I'm at melissa.carter@walmart.com. As Nicole knows, my inbox is always a little scary, but I'm happy to get in touch as soon as I can. And I really appreciate, again, all the work that folks are doing. And yeah, thank you all.
And Melissa, we know that you are a very, very busy person, and we thank you for carving out time to spend with us on our Christmas day. We really, really appreciate it. We invite you to stay on for the
Yeah,
rest of the
I
call
would
for the
love to.
celebration.
I would
And
love
with
to.
that, Colin, I'm going to send it back over to you.
Perfect. I am just gonna get my screen shared again so that we can hop back over to our lovely presentation. Here we go. It was hiding from me. Screen two. There. Beautiful. I believe y'all should be seeing my lovely screen over there. So we are golden. Okay. Well, I am so thankful, Melissa, that you were here with us today. Thank you so much. This is going to be our quickest word cloud, everybody. I'm going to warn you now because I want to get to the fun part after this. This is also fun, but I want to get to the award part is what I'm focused on. But I want to just briefly touch on how are you inspired now after hearing Melissa's incredible words to be bold? How do you plan to be bold now? All right, so let's get to that right here. Okay, represent. Be louder. I like that. I appreciate that a lot. And speak up. That can be really challenging, but it is really important for us to be the voice sometimes because, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we're the bridge, and our bridge is very important between the volunteers and the organization. Advocate connection, leverage data, shift the narrative. Oh, these are beautiful. Okay, well, I want to jump into celebrating our awards also. So I'm going to let people send in their last couple things while I say words, but I'm so excited to celebrate all of you, right? And the best way I thought we could do that is doing some nice shout outs, virtual awards, right? So here's what we're going to do is there are word clouds on Menti, but there are also other things. And so you're going to have the opportunity to share a name and then just a brief description of your reason to nominate the person. And so the first one is going to be the category for above and beyond. And so for this category, I want you to think of someone who goes above and beyond to make volunteers feel valued, supported, and connected. Someone who truly whose passion lifts up others and strengthens the field of volunteer engagement. All right, so let's get these nominations in. I'm so excited to do these shout outs. I think the first one I can say though is above and beyond for Melissa, because Melissa, again, just thank you for taking the time to come talk to us and to lift us up on such a special day. So thank you so much. Mary Ann, yes, thank you, Mary Ann, for your help and for keeping me on time as well. I appreciate that. Jordania Reeves, Nicole Smith, absolutely. Allison Schwartz, Kathleen Stacy with AmeriCorps. So positive and always has a can-do attitude. I love it. Myself, yes. Good. I'm glad you're nominating yourself. That is so important. We got to really celebrate our own. Ah, thank you. I see my name on there. Y'all are sweet. Amanda Douglas, she works daily from her heart with our hospice and my volunteers. They love her. I love that. Thanks, guys. Shelly Beck, Jane M, Ali Zul, Ali Ackridge. I love us. Fiza, Rochelle or Rachel. I'm so sorry if I get that wrong, but it's a beautiful name no matter what. So correct me. Let me know if I got it wrong. I love this so much. Thank you all for
Ooh,
giving each other shout outs for Above and Beyond.
there was also Callie, who's a live award winner.
Thank you. I missed that one. Oh my goodness. I love that. Thank you. All right. So then our next category, folks, advocate and change champion. So I want you to think of someone who speaks up for what's right and turns ideas into action, someone who champions change and inspires others to do the same. All right, here we go. Me. I love whoever just did me because we don't need to know. It's just all of us, right? Beth Steinhorn, Emily, my supervisor, Maggie Ward, Denise Nielsen, Nicole, Lisa Jenkins, Alicia Campbell, Brianna Dorellis. Oh my goodness. Words and names sometimes. Nicole Smith. Everyone on this call. Ah, thank you who put that because it's so true. All of us are really doing the most right now. Angela Williamson, Dana Litwin, Darlene, our life president, my library team. They don't have volunteer in their job title, but all advocate and are change champions. I love that. Because you're right, sometimes volunteer isn't in somebody's job title for volunteer management because volunteer management might just be looped into their role, right? But we still want to give each other shout outs for that. All right. Sarah, we got Denise, Katie, Alicia again, Alive in general, Betsy, our volunteer advisory co-chair at Breakthrough Miami. I love that. America, I'm out words, my goodness. AmeriCorps Seniors Professional Network Board, Jen, Doug, Sue, our education manager, Colin, that's me. The ED at the Arsht Center, Nikki Price for always helping us focus on the experiences of our volunteers. Julie Hempel, these are amazing. I love this. Thank you so much. Darlene Laird, Ganesh, Dana again. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. I could do this all day. This sounds so fun, just celebrating each other all day. All right, I could stay here forever, but I should probably move on. So we got Beth, Holly, Chelsea, always encourages her team to embrace change. That's a big one. Okay, that takes a lot to encourage people to also embrace change. So well done. All right. As much as I don't want to, I'm going to make myself move on because another category we have is for creativity and collaboration. And so for this one, I want you to go ahead and think of someone who tackles challenges with creativity and heart, someone who brings people together and finds solutions and helps the whole team shine. Okay, so creativity and collaboration. Sarah, me, Nicole, Sarah, I think that's Sarah twice, Karina, Colin, our development director, Jen. Yes, definitely. So many amazing people on this call. Jenny, Jordania, Ali, Michelle, been a great partner and support for the team. That's awesome. Nicole Smith, with lots of exclamation points. Amanda Douglas, always a problem solver and ready to be a part of the solution. I love that. A coworker who never says no. Kathy, absolutely epic design and marketing partner. Love it. Andrea, Casey, Chris, our amazing, perfect volunteer team at Des Moines Parks and Recs. Cheryl, Andrea, Kathy, DMP, our volunteer team, our director and external affairs officer, Fiza, Holly, Holly Hallman, because I think there's been another Holly, Nikki, Andrea Hill. There's a lot of repeats. I love this. Alicia, Kathy, our entire staff that interacts with our volunteers. I appreciate that because you're right. It's not just us. We have a lot of really wonderful and valuable team members that also interact with volunteers and supervise them. And we always want to give them the shout outs for that part of their roles also. All right, and then AZA Volunteer Manager Committee, Shayna, and the Live Summit Program Committee. Absolutely. That's a good shout out. I appreciate that a lot. And our FVA team in Cleveland. Okay. It's so hard to move on. So I'm going to let you guys do a couple more and then we'll have to take on the next one. Folks in other NYC parks. I love these. I love these. Okay. So I have had so much fun with all of you today. I so value the opportunity to be able to celebrate what we do and the fact that it's so important and special that we get to do it. So also just a quick shout out, join us. Alive is this incredible organization. Here's a little blurb about our mission and vision. So check us out so that you can join the fun a little bit more often with us. Speaking of that, I want to share some upcoming events with Alive. So somebody mentioned during the recognition awards that the National Summit team, right? So our National Summit is coming up in March, the 18th through the 20th, and that's going to be in Sacramento, California. We've got Giving Tuesday coming up too, so make sure you check that out. I believe there's going to be a wonderful person that's going to drop some links in the chat for me about those topics. We've got the Live Academy for Advocacy coming up, Communities of Practice, our newsletter, and volunteer program. I love volunteering with Alive. It helps me so much, not only just enjoy volunteering and giving back, but also professionally developing myself also while I'm doing it. It's a really, really awesome thing. All right, so one more thank you. I just want to give a shout out again for International Volunteer Managers Day. Thank you for being bold and making change with us. Thank you to Better Impact for being our sponsor as always. And I just want you all to know that we appreciate so much all of them, all of what you do. And if you ever need a reminder, feel free to reach out and I'll be your cheerleader and tell you that you're amazing and we appreciate it, right? So thank you for taking the time to thrive with Alive and don't go anywhere yet because what we're going to do is we want to do a really, really, really special group screenshot because we want to be able to share all of our lovely smiles together and celebrate this fantastic, fantastic, fantastic group for International Volunteer Managers Day. So with that, I'm going to let Nicole pop on here to join me to help me with this group screenshot. I am so excited. So thank you all again. And I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a moment.
So as Colin stops sharing while he's doing that, also please give a round of applause to the International Volunteer Manager Day committee team that put this all together. That would be Colin and Nikki and Bella and Marianne and Allison and Allie and Samantha and Joe and Cheryl and Emily. They all did a phenomenal job. It was just hey, I think we should do something. And they took it and ran with it. They created the playlist. If you haven't downloaded your certificate, go to the website, download your certificate and post it. You are so appreciated and we are so glad. And this is literally, I should have put in that collaboration. This team came together like nobody's business to make this thing happen. So I want to say a great shout out to that. Okay, so thank you all so much. I'm just letting you all know I wore my bold orange for today. That's how I'm being bold today. And also putting this being bold and stepping out to ask Melissa to join us that was my bold move, and I was so lucky that it worked out for us. So, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, we just from the bottom of the hearts of the board of directors at Alive, all of our volunteers, we just wanted to make sure that if nobody else says anything to you today, you are appreciated. You are not alone in this work. This work isn't made for everybody, but you have a if you're a live member, there's 1,000 other members that are out there. And even if you're not an Alive member, we will still support you. Membership has its benefits, but friendship is much bigger, right? So we thank you for all of the things that you're doing. Keep your head up, hang in there, ask us for help, reach out. We are all here for you. Drink your favorite beverage. I promise you, I have water in here. Drink your coffee. If you feel like you need to have a mimosa, I mean, it is brunch, mimosa time. It's a thing. It could happen. But thank you all again for joining us and carving out time for yourself to be appreciated, because we appreciate y'all. So go on, go forth, have a phenomenal day, thrive with Alive, and happy International Volunteer Managers Day. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye-bye.